So in this video, what I'm going to be showing you guys is a plethora of new information we actually got from the Fallout 76 data mine. More or less, data mining is actually extracting info from some of the files that were added to our computers with the PC beta. What I'm looking at today is largely from a Reddit thread, but again, we all technically have these files. He's just the guy that actually extracted them all and posted them online. I will have a link to that thread down below, and more or less what I'm going to be doing is highlighting some of the most interesting load screens we found. Based on this video, you'll probably realize that the load screens in Fallout 76 are particularly telling, and one of the reasons this is good is because the load screens provide a complete context. Through a lot of this data mined information, you'll find some things or words that are out of context, so you don't actually know where they fit into the greater scheme. So it's hard to get a complete picture, but with a load screen, it's, well, a load screen. It's just meant to appear on screen quickly, so these are typically concise and get their point across quickly while still having a good deal of information. There's going to be some spoilers for some of the major factions in this video. I'll do those towards the end, and I'll give you a warning before I actually start giving out some of these spoilers. But as just one final overarching disclaimer, just because there's a load screen for it doesn't mean it's actually used. Some of this could be representative of cut content that never comes, so I take everything here with a grain of salt, but obviously it's in the file, so Bethesda had some intention at some point of using it. So start things off, some of the interesting things that you may have not known about Fallout 76. Actually, sleeping in this game will give you a rested bonus, which increases your XP gain. A lot of people are wondering what the purpose of beds are, but yeah, there are some pretty tangible benefits outside of just healing you. So especially if you have a camp, it's always just a good idea to lay down in the bed until you actually get this bonus pop up on screen. Another pretty big question I've been seeing a lot of is, what does the different kind of damage perks for various weapons mean? Like, people are seeing the expert version of, let's say, the Shotgunner Perk. So more or less, there's three levels here. You have the regular one, which is like Shotgunner, that increases your damage with shotguns. Then there's also two other ones known as Expert and Master Shotgunner. The only difference between these three is you could stack them individually and have them all as separate perk cards. So let's say you max out the Shotgunner perk and get plus 20% damage. You can also max out the other two variants of these to get additional damage on a shotgun. So far from what I've seen with these perks, none of them actually do more. Like, Master Shotgunner just has a title difference, which means that you can actually use both of them at the same time. Those cards only give you more damage in the sense that you can use them in tandem, not when used alone. So a mechanic that I feel like not a lot of people understand is the wanted system in Fallout 76. So one of the ways you could become wanted is simply by attacking other players that don't attack you back. So if you shoot another player too many times, you'll become wanted and appear wanted to everyone on that server. I think pretty much everyone knows at this point you can get new weapon crafting recipes by scrapping that weapon, but did you know you could actually get new cooking recipes by picking up a new food for the first time? This has to be raw, but let's say you kill your first Deathclaw ever and you actually pick up raw Deathclaw meat, you do have a random chance at unlocking a new recipe when you do that. Or at least that's true according to one of these load screens. I'm not going to go over too many perks in this video, but one that really stood out to me is the Last Laugh perk. And more or less, after you die, you have a chance to drop a live grenade from your inventory. Very similar to Martyrdom from the Call of Duty franchise. Another notable one, the Mysterious Stranger is back with Fallout 76, so there's at least one human NPC out there. The Alien Blaster is in game, which is particularly interesting because in all previous games, the way you got this Alien Blaster was by, well, taking it off of an alien's body. Thus far, nobody has found this yet. It could be just a random event that nobody has managed to trigger just yet, or some people are speculating it might be connected to the Flatwoods monster, which in and of itself is an alien. This game's going to have the ability to actually patch itself as you're playing. There's a little thing that will pop up in the corner saying a new patch is available. Please restart the game after it finishes installing. So now moving on, we have some new game modes that were spotted in these. These in particular, remember that these may never make it into the game. Just because there's a load screen doesn't mean it'll end up as added content or future content. It could end up simply being cut content. But I'd say hopeful because these sound pretty cool. So one such one we saw was Team Deathmatch. This is actually something that was mentioned all the way back to the E3 days. During an interview, somebody said there might be a mode that's 12 versus 12 combat. Obviously, since then, we haven't seen or heard anything about that until this load screen. More or less, it just says that the first team to 50 points during the time limit will win the event, and the arenas are randomly picked from some of the popular locations around the map, likely in major towns or cities or just notable landmarks. For me, that sounds freaking awesome. I would love a feature like that in a Fallout game. How it would actually work would be interesting though. If you actually do have a 12 versus 12 combat, do you like search for a game in that style? And for that to actually work, there would likely have to be some kind of matchmaking, which the next load screen might suggest. So these talk about something called a Quickplay PvE session. It's described as an event that a team is tasked with completing, and you'll actually be randomly matched with other players. Unless of course you do have a team of your own. PvE means player versus environment or entity, and this could be relevant to some of the dungeon information that we also found pertinent to the vaults in Fallout 76. I actually made a full video on that a couple of days ago. You could click on the little eye if you want to check it out. But one other load screen we have relevant to all of this is you and your team are entering the Irrational Fear event. So there's not a lot of context for any of these. It all sounds very promising and very interesting, and I would love to see these in some of those free DLCs we get over the coming months. So a creature that I found to be particularly rare and only just encountered is the enormous Mega Sloth. Well, according to this load screen, that's actually going to be another one of those otherwise neutral creatures, somebody that won't attack you unless you get too far into its territory. I guess this one's a minor spoiler, but not really. The Liberator NPCs you encounter were actually dropped into the US before the Great War began to hopefully aid some of the Chinese troops that were coming in. The Snallygaster is a result of an FEV experiment gone wrong. The Mothman obviously was present before the Great War because, well, you have some buildings made to him. So seemingly, whatever it is, it's a different source than a lot of the other creatures in this game. One load screen describes him as a terrifying half-man, half-moth hybrid. The Scorched are described as human beings afflicted with a strange condition known as the Scorched Plague, now being controlled by a violent hive mind. Some of the dialogue you actually encounter with the Scorched will reference this also. The source of this hive mind said to be in the Savage Divide. Some of the fissure sites actually allude to this. You could see, well, a fissure where you could get into the ground, which apparently is what actually is infecting some of these Scorched via the Scorched Beasts. Apparently honeybeasts, those bee-based enemies, are particularly vulnerable to both heat and cold attacks. It's a rather odd thing to have, but hey, that's cool, I guess, right? So that's all the general info I learned from these load screens. Going on, we're actually going to have some slight spoilers for some of the major factions. It's nothing crazy or kind of large, but it does give you some context as to why certain factions are there or what the origins of those factions are. If you're the type of person that just wants to find that naturally and on your own, I would click off the video now. But otherwise, we do find out from these that the raiders in this region are actually rich tourists that used to be on ski holidays. Basically, after the bombs fell, they turned selfish and suddenly turned into the raider groups. This gives a little bit of context as to why there's so many raiders in the top of the world region, which is by a bunch of ski slopes. Apparently the White Springs Hotel was under great financial strain before the Great War began. As a result of that, they replaced most of their human staff with robots. That's why you actually see all of those robots walking around the White Springs Resort. So if you do some of the quests to find out about the Brotherhood of Steel, it'll lead you to this place called Camp Venture. Basically, this was going to be a survival skills training facility that was open to tourists, but then later was seemingly used to train the military itself. All throughout that, you could find these big logos for the Thunder, but I never really found a great explanation as to what the Thunder was until this load screen. Taggarty's Thunder was a U.S. Army Ranger unit led by Lieutenant Elizabeth Taggarty. She's a paladin here, and based on certain holotapes, it definitely seems like she had some kind of personal relation with Elder Maxon, and is likely a pretty big reason as to why the Brotherhood of Steel even had a presence in West Virginia. And also apparently she had a difficult time coordinating with some of the other peaceful factions over here. So throughout most of the map, you could actually find these like strike lines and a bunch of posters for this. Apparently there's even some weapons that are just a strike board. Well, the explanation for this was a lot of the major companies, including Robco and some of the mining companies, were replacing their human staff with robotic staff as a cheaper alternative. I don't know if there's maybe a big coordinated strike right around the time when the bombs dropped, and that's kind of the justification for everything being left out as you enter into the game. I wouldn't be surprised if it's explained in a terminal entry somewhere, but at least the load screens do give context as to why, for some reason, so many people were on strike. Apparently the Free States, one of the new factions in this game, were widely disliked before the start of the war, but following the bombs, a lot of people sought them out and actually wanted them as allies. This load screen makes it seem like the Free States actually successfully seceded from the United States. Not really sure how that would work without creating your own state. But either way, it seems like their motivation for creating bunkers was actually that they thought the government was lying about the Vault program, which they were kind of right. Riley Clay was the public face of the Free States, but behind the scenes, Senator Sam Blackwell was one of the major forces. If you actually do the Enclave quest, you'll hear a lot about this guy, Sam Blackwell, and also Riley, but it seems like they were two fundamental members of getting this to be an established faction. Another creature that seemingly was present before the bombs dropped was, well, the Flatwoods monster. He was reported being seen in and around Flatwoods, but otherwise, yeah, that's pretty much it. That's a ton of information we got from a ton of different load screens. Actually, making this video took a while because reading through like hundreds of load screens is kind of time consuming. I tried to curtail them to be some of the most interesting, but if you guys want to just see the raw source, I will have a link to that down below also. As always, again though, I thank you all for watching. I do hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you all next time. Later.